Well, hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to the Gundam Explained show. It is September, which is pretty cool, I guess, as we tend to have what the consistent to be continued of is the dates of I don't know why that's a thing, but like, hey, it's like the weather. It's like no one else has anything to say. So it's like, hey, it's September, nearing the end of summer, huh?
Yeah, right. It doesn't feel like it. Still, 98 degrees outside. Oh, I don't know how bad it is down there, but here it's sweltering.
No, that's bad. It's been in the low 100s and um next week is when it's gonna drop. Like, there was a day, on payday on a Friday, I decided to take it off. It's gonna be 78 max, and I'm gonna enjoy
Nice.
that day.
It's not the heat, it's the humidity. Dur, dur, dur.
I'm gonna I'm gonna be chilling outside, I just yeah, I wanna get out more. Like I was telling you earlier, or I was telling someone earlier, oh, no, you told me this, actually, about absorbing the sun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that
So
was
I did that
that was
this
on the
morning.
show yesterday, right? We were talking
Yeah,
about
that's right.
yeah, biophysical hacks and things like, oh,
Yeah.
well, you gotta breathe through your nose because breathing through your nose maximizes there's all kinds of stuff.
But
There's a
I
lot of
think it's true.
charlatans online.
Yeah, but there's all these little things that I think they can add up. Like when
Yeah.
the sun thing makes sense. I used to be out in the sun
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot more in the mornings, and then today I was like, well, I'm gonna just after I dropped off the youngest one, I was like, I'm gonna stay out here for a little bit and just do some work on my phone. And it felt good just yeah, getting in those rooms. It made me feel a little more positive because I was feeling a little down during the week, but I think it is a lot of, connecting with people, being online or from being online and then being outside.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you
I think
gotta get
it's
some
all
some in-person FaceTime. Sunlight always helps. I think it's hilarious that, we've come up with those sad lamps, the seasonal affected disorder lamps that you can shine, UV
Oh,
rays on your face. It's like,
oh, that's pretty crazy. I
it's
didn't
like,
even think
or you
about
could
that.
just go outside.
No, but well, anyway, how are you doing? We had our stream on your channel yesterday, which I thought was yet another good talk that we do every once in a while on your streams where we start getting pretty deep and it has a lot of good positive messages. So
Yeah, yeah, I really enjoyed that talk, and I hope that, other people were able to relate and hopefully draw some, good advice, good conclusions about, just how to not just how to hobby, but how to live.
yeah. No, not just how to hobby, but how to live. I like that. I like that. Um, well, no, let's see. Let me do something here. My other computer's making a lot of noise, and that's very annoying. So I'm going to mute it. Um, no, but uh, curious. Anything Gundam related you've gotten into this week or adjacent?
I mean, nothing that I haven't shared already. I don't want to bore everyone with the same old, projects. And especially given what we talked about yesterday, I'm gonna stop
Oh yeah,
telling everybody what I'm doing. I'm just gonna show it to you when it's done.
that's true. If you haven't watched it, watch the episode from yesterday because it's kind of relate, yeah, to the whole hobby thing, talking about projects. No, that's pretty good. That was a good time. But I hadn't made a Gundam Goods purchase in a while, and I finally got a
Oh,
pre-order in the other that came in yesterday, and it's
oh
that
yeah, the
Blossom.
block.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It I love everything about it. The look, the color, the even just the figure itself, the
yeah.
paint, the color separation, like,
I
and then
love that radome on the shoulder.
yeah, I
It's
know, and that it could transform into a core fighter that looks badass. So, like, when it comes to the stuff I like about Gundam, this hits all those cues, and I'll probably, yeah, really soon have a review video up of it to kind of look at its accessories, what it
I'm
can
looking
do, and
forward to that
everything.
one. Interesting that, all of those Gundams designed by Nina Purpleton from 0083 and that, adjacent 0083 storylines, they're all named after flowers,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of interesting. It's if you look at like some of the male mechanics throughout the Gundam franchise, they always name their mobile suits something aggressive and
Oh, yeah.
cool. And then,
Yeah.
she's over here talking about the Blossom and the Zephyranthes and the Dendrobium Orcus. Like it's
And that's pretty neat because that's almost like even though Gundam is about the robots, the story writers are taking the characters and in universe explaining the robots through their eyes. So yeah, adding, there's a lot of, I guess, female staff at Anaheim Electronics in the first place. And
Sure.
not that women means flowers. It's just kind of a generalization, I guess, that,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that sort of gendered language that
yeah,
that just occurs naturally. And it's something you and I were talking about before the show started is Gundam has this way of, as a franchise, portraying human interactions in a realistic way as opposed to like a very storybook cliche sort of way where things don't happen because that's what's supposed to happen for the story to be complete. Things just happen because that's human nature.
yeah. I like that. Yeah, we were just talking about that, weren't we? Because like, there's a lot of things in Tomino Gundam that seems awkward, but it's just because of how he's representing the characters to be pretty realistic. And I was using the example of Hathaway, where that whole time in the Hathaway movie, Hathaway and what's the girl's name? I always forget. Like
Oh,
Gigi.
Gigi. Yeah.
Yeah, like, you could tell he's interested, but he doesn't want to, but he's just not speaking, and that's very common with, human nature. A lot of times we have trouble speaking on how we're really feeling, like, on how our emotions, and that's
Yeah.
sometimes, I usually it's funny because in shows and movies, you'll purposely have these situations occur just so it moves the plot forward,
Yeah.
and, in Hathaway, that plot wasn't moving forward, and it was almost annoying, but it's like, well, I guess he's kinda acting like, and then on Gigi's side, she doesn't know why he's acting that way, so that's why she's just doing her own thing, you know?
Right.
I
Yeah, I mean,
I
a
get it.
lot of people expect a story to go kind of like Gilmore Girls, where they're just reeling lines back and forth at each other and dropping these references. And how frequently, when you're in conversation, can you just are you on point with that and you don't stumble, you don't stutter,
Oh,
you don't do
yeah.
anything? Whereas, it, I know this happens to me all the time, but how many times do you go for either a handshake or a fist bump and the other person does the opposite and you do that? That is a Tominoism if
Yeah,
there ever was one.
exactly. That's a good way to put it. Also, I liked what you said about, like, you've brought up Gilmore Girls quite a bit. I've never seen it. Is that, like, a good show or something?
Maybe it's a guilty pleasure of mine, I don't know.
Okay, I might have to check that out. But, yeah, that whole thing of, like, talking where, yeah, there's some dialogue where when people are going back and forth, it's like, okay, this is obviously written to
Yes.
be like this, and it's not natural. And then there's a difference between writing that's pretty natural. And it makes me think, I wonder if, like, with this age of TikToks and podcasts, will that form the sort of writing we might see in the future in fiction, where people are kind of picking up on cues that are done in podcasts or on TikToks or in videos where people are speaking more naturally and sometimes awkwardly, but that's part of the charm?
Yeah, I think that we are getting more acclimated to natural conversation and long form content that is less scripted and less, prescribed.
Yeah.
One example I think is the actor Mark Duplass, who he co-wrote and starred in that TV show The League. He's also been in a couple of horror
Oh,
movies that have been really, really good. If
yeah.
you haven't
Okay.
seen, I forget what the one is that he starred
He
in,
was at a
but
cabin where he was like a creepy dude?
yes,
I
exactly.
forget that, but I know what you're talking about, yeah.
So yeah, Mark Duplass is, I believe he coined the term mumblecore, which is they
Oh,
don't write scripts. They have ideas that they're supposed to get across in every scene that they shoot, but they don't have lines written for them, and so everything has to be sort of improv. And so it
I like
comes
that.
off a little bit more natural. It's still scripted because obviously they have to go in and edit things, but I think that
Yeah.
it really sounds a lot more authentic.
And that's funny because that's especially with my channel here, like, I when I was making my videos, it's like I didn't wanna make scripted videos. I hate what it sounds like when I am just reading a script, and there are some videos recently where I've been doing that, but I'm trying to get better at there's some stuff I just have to read. And so it's like, how
Right.
can I learn to but then when I can, it's like, okay, if I have a good amount of thoughts in my mind, can I go in front of the camera and just speak and speak and speak? And And then it just reminds me of when I the pastime, that we're missing of hanging out with people in real life, how fun that is, and there's there's that's going on, which is pretty interesting, because a lot of times when you're making a video, you are sometimes inadvertently going into a character, and I feel like I slightly have that to a degree. It's more of the same character I have whenever I go talk to people. But
Oh,
then
yeah.
when I'm by myself, I don't have that character. When I'm by myself, I'm like
I
Harrison
generally
Ford,
swear
and
a
I
lot
don't.
more when I'm not on camera.
Yeah. No, but yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and again, I think that's another example of sometimes where Japanese art tends to be ahead, but it's by truly looking at human nature to
Yeah.
really find what, and it's not as ahead as it is maybe timeless, in a way, where it's like it's really looking at the root of any part of storytelling and telling it in a natural way. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see what effect, AI script writing and AI, just text generation in general is going to have on the future of entertainment media and communication in general. My boss, for one, sends a lot of AI generated emails to the staff, and it's like because I know him, I know that he doesn't speak like that naturally. So when I get these AI generated emails, I roll my eyes and I can't take it seriously.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I wonder how often we're gonna come across that in the future just for little things where it's
Oh,
like it
yeah.
could be like your friend sends you something or a parent does something and it's like, wait a minute, that was an AI thing, you know? Yeah,
Yeah. It
that's
just goes to show how powerful, like, the uncanny valley is and how we don't realize it, but human beings are very good at recognizing artificial,
yeah,
you know
that's right. Yeah. And I think what would have helped this whole AI trend is if uh, the word AI or artificial intelligence wasn't used, and it was just
Yeah,
instead they just evolved algorithm. Like
exactly.
there's
It
there's
really is
this
algorithmic intelligence, not
yeah, yeah,
and, obviously the AI is just a marketing term. So,
yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, something else this week too that I got. So I don't know if you guys heard me talk about I got that metal robot spirits wound wart. And as cool as it is, it was super expensive for how small it is. And I did that recent video where I talked about the wound wart and how it's really just a small thing that you add the TR6, you add all this
yeah,
stuff on it.
lack of accessories for the price.
Yeah. And on top of that, they sell an option part set. And I guess it was up for pre-order and I totally missed it, but now it's being sent shipped out, and I found a site that had it for a good price, so I
Nice.
got it. So I'll do a review on that because I think it would be more interesting to do a wound wart review with the option parts. And what's going to be even more interesting is when I get the option parts, like what then TR6 variant am I making, and is it possible to do variants? And could I put those parts on the Hazel? And does that, because I think part of what I learned doing that video is if you really want to get in on that TR line, there's 1 through 6, like
Yeah.
there are so many different variants, and what bodies do they use? Like I I feel like that's going to be a journey for me, and I'm now a little further ahead than I was before, but yeah, I'll be making some more videos. Talos in the chat, he's been helping me with that. We're going to be making some more videos that kind of deal with Advanced of Zeta and the terminology and stuff like that. So, um, it helps. I always say it helps when you have it in hand. So when I have, I would love to have every
Absolutely.
TR6 component, but I don't think that's going to happen. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. And I'm trying to think, was there anything else? The only other thing I could bring up is, I did that video on the ROG Ally,
Yes,
which is,
very
and
cool.
I just love, like, I don't know what it is. There's something about having a handheld versus turning on my computer or going and living on TV where I can just quickly get into a game. Like, so if I'm just sitting around or something, and instead of scrolling my phone, I'll be like, hey, I'm going to load up the emulator and play this old SNES Gundam game. It's,
So
it,
awesome.
I mean, maybe there's a lot of front loaded work of setting everything up and downloading everything. But once you do, it's really nice to, especially for research purposes, being able to, and then
Shut up, honey, I'm doing research.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's
Well, it's one of those examples where you bring up a very good point with the ROG Ally, where being able to just kind of pick up and go it really is the kind of future we didn't realize we needed. And I'm going to say it's one of those ways that Nintendo was ahead of the game with
yep.
something like the Switch.
Mhm.
Um, in a lot of ways, I think what a lot of people want is that ability to play remote, that ability to
Yeah.
but you still want to be able to plug into the console and have the big screen TV. So it's like that flexibility. If the Switch just had next gen graphics, I think that it would blow PlayStation and Xbox out of the water. But
Yeah.
they're stuck at that, 30 frames a second.
I know, and I gotta say, I like I like being able to play game because I love gaming so much to be very dynamic in the way I play. There are some games that I just love sitting with a handheld in front of me and just playing. Like it works. And there's some games, yeah, I want to be on the big screen, or when I'm playing Armored Core, it's on my PC. You know,
Yeah.
depends on the game. Um, Someone in chat was asking, is it easy? This is Nike. Is it easy
Oh
to
yeah.
upgrade the NVMe on the ROG? And it actually is. I watched some videos about it because I was interested. And yeah, they just take off the back. You do have to remove a few things, components. It's not like it's modular, but and I'm just saying it's easy because I've done stuff like that before. So it really depends. But people are buying 2 terabyte SSDs and putting in there, and I'm like, man,
That's
I
awesome.
it's when they're on sale, they're about 200, which is a pretty high price. So that's got to be like at a certain point, I want to upgrade. Now, I did buy a 1 terabyte SSD card to put in, so it's not like I changed the module; it's the expansion card,
Yeah.
and that's been perfect because I loaded all my ROMs that I have and my emulators, and then I started
Excellent.
installing games. Like I have Armored Core 6, GBO2, Starfield, a bunch of other games installed. So having like Armored Core 6 and Starfield right there, these 2 recent games that just came out, and I could just
And
play
those
them
are
like
those are what, 90 gigs a piece?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
The new NBA 2K, I don't play them, but that one's gonna be 160 gigs, which is
for what?
crazy. Yeah. Well, and I think it's the textures because they apparently they have a new mode where it
Oh,
can take, an actual game that occurred, like a live game, and then make it where you're watching it with the in-game engine, in real time, and it
that's
looks yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But the next thing that I want to do is, and someone actually brought this up in the comments for the ROG Ally, is they were talking about a game I never heard of, something Hammer, SD Gundam Hammer. And I looked at for the Wii. I'm sorry, for the Wii specifically. So I
Oh,
looked at
gotcha.
it and it was really neat. It looked like pretty good graphics for like being cutesy SD animation, but
Sure.
it looked I don't know why you would need the motion controls, but it's like you use the hammer, I guess. I don't know.
That's so
And then
funny.
I saw that there were some other really cool Wii Gundam games I never heard of, never played. So that will probably be one of the next things I get into once I do a proper review of Unicorn on PS3 is looking at the Wii games. Because they even have a Wii game that is you're in the cockpit and it's all motion controls. And
Now, do you
I
have a
gotta try
Wii
that.
that you're gonna be playing these on, or are you gonna emulate? Because it might be difficult to work with the motion controls if you don't have the software.
I do have a Wii. It's not plugged up or anything, so I could do that. But I also have Wii remotes that I could sync with because I've been researching it. It's very, very easy to sync with a PC. So
Okay, sweet.
we'll see. I'm gonna research what's gonna be the easiest method. If it's if it's easy enough and it's not expensive to where I can just import the game or buy the game and play it on my Wii without modding, I might just do that just for the classic approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were even talking about the Wii. I think it was yesterday where that was kind of like a we almost skipped that generation because it's like, is
Yeah.
this really for us? Yeah.
It's it's one of those things that it's similar to the Dreamcast where it might have just been ahead of its time because now everybody's doing like VR stuff and you're basically I mean, the VR controls are practically the same as the Wii nunchuck with just a
Yep.
couple of extra buttons and things. So it's
Yep.
just one of those things where sometimes the innovative the first generation of a given product is not the perfect iteration of said product.
Yeah, I still when it comes to Dreamcast, I feel like that is everyone has the times where the timeline split into the dark times. For me, it was PlayStation playing dirty with Dreamcast because Sony was telling people, retailers, when they were going to sell them the PS2, they're like, "Yeah, we'll have you carry the PS2, but you can't carry any Dreamcast stuff."
That's crazy.
I know, and they got away with it, and 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 they even went even further. There were some store, and I remember locally here because I would always go to stores to buy games and talk to the people. And I forget what electronic store it was, but it wasn't an electronic store that sold games, but they had PlayStation games. So I asked them, like, how come you only have PlayStation games? They're like, well, Sony mandates if we sell any of their products, we have to carry their games. And I was like, oh, wow.
Interesting.
So
Huh.
Sony was playing dirty, and that took down the Dreamcast.
And they play dirty in the music industry too. I mean, Sony
Oh,
owns what,
yeah.
like 60% of all music. You know,
Yeah.
chances are if you get copy struck on YouTube for something, it's Sony that's doing it.
You might see Sony or Columbia, I think is the other thing you'll
Yep.
see that. Yeah, and I think there was a big deal with, The Offspring, which is a band I used to be my favorite band, and,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if it happened, but they were trying to buy the their catalog back from Sony because how they were, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kinda
Because then
interesting.
if it's like if you're an artist that you wanna release remasters and stuff, but you don't even own the rights to your own music, like, what do you what do you even
Yeah.
do?
Yeah,
Sony is the Anaheim Electronics of
yeah, no, yeah, that's a good way to put it. So Nike's talking about not necessarily Sega America gave up on the Saturn and Dreamcast pretty quickly in Japan. Saturn and Dreamcast was supported much longer. Well, there was a reason for that. It's not that they gave up on it. It's actually that when they were coming out with the Saturn, the Sega Genesis was just still selling so well. And the Saturn, though, okay, by the time the Saturn was going to come out, Sega then told Sega America, "Can you come up with like a in between system?" And they were like, "Well, I don't know if we should."
it
And then
seems
that's
kinda
where the
silly.
32X came from,
Yeah.
and the 32X kind of confused consumers.
Yeah,
And even though I like the 32X and it had promise, but it's one of those things where that's too many things to consider. The other interesting thing is when the first Sonic came out and got really popular, it was Sega of America that carried the torch and made Sonic 2, 3, Sonic and Knuckles. Like, so it's like you can, like, thank Sega of America for how they did Sonic, um, and then it even went as far as, so right before the Dreamcast shuttered, Sega of America was trying to work with Microsoft to make it where then Microsoft would kind of carry on the Dreamcast. Because
yeah,
this was before Microsoft was, because the Microsoft Xbox development just happened overnight, like really quickly. They even had like a fake prototype to show off a game, but the original talks were going to be that Microsoft would help Sega develop another console because the Dreamcast used Windows NT, but then that fell through last minute because then I think Sega of Japan didn't like how much American influence there was. So it's very interesting, that whole thing where both sides had their ideas, but I think it was during that time, the 90s, when it comes to importing, exporting, like that just messes up timeline of shipping things.
yeah, it was kind of the Wild West back then, especially with, just the internet taking off and kind of opening up consumers' eyes to what was going on.
Yeah.
In the early 90s, people didn't even realize that there was, like, I don't know, a different version of Super Mario 2 that people were
Yeah.
playing,
I know. Lost Levels is what they released it as eventually
Yeah,
here in the US. Yeah.
you could not get
Yeah.
away with that stuff now. A and
Yeah.
so
Uh,
and so it's interesting, it
yeah.
presents a big challenge for the folks at, like, Bandai Namco Entertainment America because, that is a whole, like you said, it's a separate entity from Bandai Japan,
Yeah.
and so, they have to kind of play within a different sandbox and, sometimes when we as Gundam consumers kind of see something going on in Japan, we're like, "Well, why aren't we getting that, and why are they localizing
Yeah.
this?" And these are things that have been going on for decades.
Yeah, that's very interesting because with UC Engage that's coming out on mobile, that's a separate company, even though it's within Bandai, from the company doing the SD internal. Yeah,
Yeah.
Eternal that's coming out. Like it it's very interesting. And I feel like that's just I guess, fragments of older ways of doing things, and eventually it would solidify into a single thing. I feel like it has to, like, but then again, you look at Microsoft and they don't have a big Japanese presence.
No,
So I wonder how much there is sort of at the top decision making, that cultural divide that then trickles down to the consumer who wouldn't care, the
true.
consumer who would probably lap up this stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I do think it's interesting. I tend to prefer that segmented style of production because then that's what gives us the variety that we have. I feel like if everything
yeah,
was consolidated under one company, under one umbrella, that's when you get everything is so samey and, you know, I would say that that's probably one of the weaknesses of Microsoft and Xbox is that, you know, their game catalog is very samey. Everything's FPSs and
or indies that haven't, not anything against indies, but it's more of like, well, what's a cheap publisher or developer we can grab and release their stuff on Game Pass?
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Fall Guys, that'll run on anything. So you
yeah.
don't, it's not like they have to do a whole lot of console specific development.
You know, you remind me of something that I loved, and I don't know if it happens much anymore, but it's like when, for instance, on the Super Nintendo or back on the Genesis and Super Nintendo when the Aladdin game came out, they were made
Oh
by
yeah,
2 completely different developers. So it was neat that you could play, like, essentially 2 different games, or like the RoboCop vs. Terminator on the Genesis and Super Nintendo were also completely different games. Like, the
yeah,
RoboCop vs. Terminator on Genesis was made a year later by David Perry of, I think, Shiny, and he was at Virgin maybe at the time, and he just built the engine while making the game. Like, and it's
wild.
like, and it ended up looking and sounding better. I think some of it could be a personal preference, but in my opinion, the
Sure.
Genesis version of that game was better. Um, uh, and so that, you know, we've seen that go up to, like, when it comes to, like, maybe around Wii and PlayStation 2 or maybe 3 by then. Like, I think the Force Unleashed games, maybe the most recent, even though it's a while ago, where they were different on their respective systems because of hardware. But I wonder how much we're gonna see that in the future. Because I know,
It's a good
speaking of
question.
Star Wars, that latest Jedi Survivor, it was originally only on next gen or current gen consoles. They've now gone back to rework it to work on older hardware. And my thought on that is because that's gonna be Switch 2 specs are gonna be equivalent to a PS4 or Xbox. So I
There
think
you
they're
go.
gonna re-release it. Yeah, but yeah, I wonder, we don't see that much anymore now, right? Where games are, like, completely different of an
Yeah.
IP.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that used to be a big deal with, like you said, with franchise type games. RoboCop, the Jurassic Park video games, from Genesis to Nintendo were wildly different. Um, and it's because they had to design for the hardware that they were
Yeah.
operating on. A lot of times you'd notice audio differences because
Yeah, especially
Nintendo
audio.
audio was always just a little tinny. It wasn't they didn't have as many audio channels to work with, I think was the issue.
Yeah, and it seemed like the Genesis sounded worse, but I think there was something where it had more channels, so, like, it made it more dynamic sounding or something.
Right,
Yeah.
and so it's just fascinating, that kinda stuff. One of my favorite sort of, industry stories is when they remastered Resident Evil 2 for the Nintendo 64, and they had to
Oh,
compress a 2-disc video game into a single Nintendo cartridge, and, it was like, how are we gonna even the video like, the opening cutscenes and stuff alone would have completely eaten up all of the memory that they could fit on a cartridge. And so it's crazy to me that, like, the Nintendo Switch still runs on cartridges. Like, Nintendo is not giving up the cartridge game.
yeah, no, that is interesting, and, yeah, I like that you brought up that Resident Evil 2 because that was during a time where it was a big deal that cartridges could have full motion video. Because
Yeah.
that there th I think the time before that was done, I think there was a game, it wasn't Red Alert, it was Red something on Genesis, and the beginning intro had this quick little, like, full motion thing, and it's like, how did they do that?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
It's amazing.
and, just real quick before we move on, I don't know if you heard, I'm trying to look up, but there was a game just released on the NES, this year.
Yes. Oh,
Oh, you heard
man.
about that too?
Yeah, I actually just watched a YouTube video on it,
Oh,
and it's like a
Garbage
it's
Pail
like
Kids, but I don't know
w
if that's a remake or a new one.
oh, I don't know.
I don't but that's I mean, I like that. Like, there's something about when especially if you can make a game now on older hardware, but come up with tricks to do new things. Like
Yeah,
like, when I think of the Vampire Survivors games, it's like, that could have been on it potentially, I don't know, with all the stuff happening on screen, but the button, you just move the D-pad. Like,
yeah,
it's not complex, but it's modern, you know?
and that I think when I was watching the developer kind of it was like a devlog for that game you were talking about, they were talking about, okay, well, here is our sprite for like this ghost enemy that we have, and but we can maximize space by just copying the top of the ghost sprite and pasting it on the bottom and rotating it. So it's like they reused a lot of sprite sections in order
Oh,
to save animation space, and it is really, really impressive stuff. It's just
that's
cool to
cool.
see people still innovating on old tech.
Yeah, I agree, I agree. Like, I was thinking last night how much I want and I don't know if anyone knows this off the top of their head, but, like, a simple Sega Genesis sound emulator where I can just sit there and I don't know. I've seen people take Game Boys and hook them up to
Yeah,
reproduce sound on synths, and, I just love the
very cool.
Genesis sounds for some reason because I grew up with it.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a bit of that nostalgia factor, but,
but speaking of games, which happens to be common with me, so Armored Core 6, players have gone through and actually made armored cores, look like Gundam, and then here's the Sazabi that
yeah,
looks excellent. I mean, and I
it's
remember when I unlocked these legs, I'm actually using them on my main build right now.
sweet.
I was like, "Those look like Sazabi legs."
Yeah, and I
It's
love that they
crazy.
even uploaded the Casval, decal,
Yeah.
and
So it's crazy because it has that decal, maker that is
yeah,
it's you could do whatever you want as long as you're creative. It's like you were talking about with the ghosts. It's like using the limitations to manipulate in a way to make your own decal.
yeah, that's
Um,
one thing that I do like about some sports games. I think the last FIFA that I played, which was probably a few years ago, you could create your own team logo online, upload it, and then download your team into the PlayStation. And it was like, I basically uploaded the crest from my, adult rec league and created myself as a player.
oh. That's pretty cool, actually. I like it when games have that layer of customization. Even I think when it was either GoldenEye or Perfect Dark when it first came out, they originally were going to have it where you can take a picture, and I forget if this was supposed to be some camera add-on or it was the Game Boy Color camera. I don't know, but you take a picture and then you're able to upload it into the N64. And
And
then
you'd
I
have
guess
it
because of a
textured.
shooting, I think it was Columbine, they decided to
Yeah,
remove
that
that. But here's a gun cannon.
very cool.
And I think the main thing we're gonna see, looking at these is it's more about the general shape of the mobile suit,
Yeah.
and a lot of seeing like the colors, just getting the coloring and the decals, which it's okay. I mean, we're not gonna
Yeah.
get okay, here's Epion.
I mean, remember a couple weeks ago when on my stream when we were recoloring the bound dock, it
Oh
using
yeah.
different mobile suit palettes. It's the same sort of idea that you get here, where it's like you're taking almost forms of color and applying them in very strategic ways in order to sort of replicate the look without completely copying the form.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I guess that's what's pretty much going on. So here's a Jinx from Double O. Not too familiar with it other than I saw it in Double O.
Not a
GM2,
very exciting color palette.
yeah.
It's
No,
gray on
exactly.
gray.
And GM2, this is a good example of what you were just talking about because the shape of this is not a GM, but it's the colors,
Yeah,
using the colors.
very strategically positioned.
Like the Strike Freedom. Like at first I'm looking at it, it's like that doesn't look like a Strike Freedom, but I'm like, wait a minute. That those colors are actually very Strike Freedom-y with the gold and the
Yeah.
fact that with the colors you can add a layer of weathering or metallicness to it. So
And you know what? This is a fascinating sort of thought experiment because I suspect that the Gundam live action movie will end up looking a lot like Armored Core 6 custom Gundam mobile suits. You know,
That
kinda how,
that would
like,
be that would
it's, like,
actually be funny.
close, but not quite.
Like how for the X-Men movie, they all wore leather, the black leather. It's kinda
Yeah,
like they make a live action American Gundam movie, they make it like serious looking robots instead. That I
yeah,
would hate that. I would hate that, but
please
but
don't do
that
that.
it makes sense. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, that's
these
kinda the way that they went with Transformers, right?
yeah, that's you know what? I admit, like, I'm not into Transformers, I don't even like the movies that much, but that was a pretty neat attempt at a new way to design giant robots. Because it
Yeah,
has all those pieces to make it seem more like, okay, yes, it's gonna need all those pistons and bits to move.
yeah.
So, yeah, and then, yeah, here's a new again, not really the shape of it, but I like how they did the fin
I was
funnels
gonna say
up
the
here.
fin funnels are a nice touch.
Yeah, um, let's see, there's, like, the Thunderbolt, that's, like, okay, like, yeah, some of them it's more of just and I don't know if I shared it with you, but or did I share it the Gundam Explained Discord server? It was, my armored core and I just put blue, white, and red on it, and then I made the little Federation cross crest thing, and I just put it on the chest, and it's
Awesome.
super basic. But I was like, "Here's my Gundam." Um, let's see
Yeah.
what else. Yeah, not familiar with that. Oh, this
Yeah,
one
that's an
looks cool.
IBO.
Here's
Man, I hate
Mark
that I love
II.
the Titans colors as much as I do because that
Yeah,
color scheme would look good on anything.
yeah, it's making me want to use this, and that's another thing in Armored Core. You can get like codes or something where you can like import what people have made. I
That's really
love the way
cool.
this looks.
I
Like,
think that yeah, dude, that looks fantastic. And honestly, I think that that as a gaming I'm surprised that more video games, especially AAA publishers, don't do that kind of community sharing um feature. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
remember Little Big Planet was such a big deal because
uh,
you could share levels across the internet and play what other people had built. That that
that goes into
we
what
need
we were
more of that.
talking about yesterday. I think with gaming, need to have that sort of creator aspect to
Yeah.
it. Um, and that's the thing with Armored Core. I find it very lacking as a full game. But for people that want to do customization in terms of building a mech or decals and painting, like full on has all that. And that's the thing. As personally, I don't care about that stuff. I would rather be playing Armored Core and like, here is this universe's Armored Core of this type. And I would like, okay, I'll use that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not much of a customizer. You guys could see all my GBO2 streams, like all of my mobile suits are. I turn down the weathering and make it less glossy to make it seem like
A little more
straight up
matte.
out of the cartoon. Yeah,
Yeah,
or
that's
anime.
when you get that heavy into customization systems, it ends up taking away any it's like why bother picking anything at all, you know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah. This one looks pretty good, and it's the colors. They got that gold sheen just right.
and the rifle really looks the part.
Yeah, yeah. That is pretty cool. Um, let's see, and then yeah, this Gundam Heavy Arms Custom that looks like it.
Yeah,
The Calibarn. Okay, let's
people
get
love
the
that
Farron.
Calibarn, man.
Barbados, that looks like it because, the colors and the decals.
Yeah,
And I think Armored Core lends more to that kind of design with, like, the slim designs.
yeah, slim waist.
Gun tank.
The gun tank is by far the best one.
Well, let's look at the Zaku too, because that's pretty good.
Yeah, I appreciate the effort taken to create the mono eye.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like that one a lot. That's pretty good. Um, what were some other things? An RX-78 but no, there's no way.
I was gonna say, is that yours?
Yeah, I know, right? For a second, it's like, this could have been mine. But no, that's not, and that's the thing. I think there's something about the very humanoid shapes of mobile suits that are
Yes,
pretty interesting. They're not as realistic to me, but it works for some reason.
I agree. And I've always preferred that type of mecha design compared to, armored cores or,
Yeah, same here.
BattleTech, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what it is. It's like I like mechs, but I didn't know I liked mobile suit mechs. And then yeah, the
Yeah,
number one's the Sazabi, which I gotta say that Sazabi looks great. Like
it really does.
it, yeah. So
They
pretty cool.
understood the assignment.
Do you plan on playing Armored Core 6?
I still haven't picked it up yet, but, we'll see. And it's,
Yeah, it's one of those where it's not a bad game. It's not necessarily my type of game.
yeah, I it's funny to me because there's been a lot of discourse on Twitter about like, after playing Armored Core 6, a lot of people have been talking about like, well, my ideal mecha game or like
Oh,
my dream mecha game would be this, this, and this. And just got me thinking about, you know, a lot of people talk about customization stuff. They talk about like, having a story or something like that. But no one really talks about the same thing that you and I bring up all the time, which is we just want like a non-linear, for lack of a better term, open world mech game that's not
yeah.
mission based and not just grinding through levels. And I think it's crazy to me that no one talks about that, that there really is no mech game that I can think of. And chat can correct me. There's no mech game I can think of that has that sort of open world aspect. I think maybe Xenogears was one that people have brought up to me in the
Hmm,
past, but
I haven't played that. But you know what? That's a good point because just think of when someone's playing something like Elden Ring or Fallout and they are so into their character and how their character is going through the world. The open world Gundam game would be, or open world mech game would be that. It would be your Fallout, your Elden Ring, but your Armored Core is what you're focused on. You
yeah,
know, yeah, sure, you have a pilot maybe, but it's like going through the world in your mech and exploring with your mech and being like, okay, I'm gonna get these thrusters so I can get to this hidden castle. I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah, that needs to happen. Some other game stuff real quick is GBO 2 had an update, and I guess the GBO 2 days are going on, so you can get your free mobile suits
yeah.
that way for 4 days or
Get you
so.
get you an Act Zaku.
Yeah. That was good. And this one is the Ghoul, which I gotta admit, I hadn't heard of it. In fact, it looked like from Wing almost. This looks like is it called like the Magnac or something like that?
Yeah, the Maganak core.
Maganak. Okay. It almost looks like that in a way, but this is
It does.
a mobile suit from the Blazing Shadow, which is a light novel series, and it takes place after the One-Year War. So the Ghoul is a prototype mobile suit that takes inspiration from Zimmad mobile suit design. So Zimmad was like the ones making the crazier looking mobile suits for like I want to say it might have been like the At guy and the
Yeah, all of the amphibious mobile suits and then the Zuda was their original,
oh, it doesn't have a
um
list. Oh,
oh,
the
that's
Zuda.
disappointing.
That's right. That's a very good call out there because that was supposed to try to rival, the Zaku, and I guess they purposely made it not just so the Zaku can
Yeah, again,
live
that's
on.
one of those things where Gundam is just so realistic. You think about real life weapons manufacturers. I think that
Yeah.
I forget what it was called, but there's like the US military has like their new next gen rifle program where they were accepting applications from weapons manufacturers, like who's going to develop the licensed next gen assault rifle for US soldiers. And it's like that's exactly what Xeon did with Xeonic and Zimmad, is it was like,
Yeah.
"Who's gonna develop our flagship mobile suit? Give us your best shot." And Zimmad made the Zuda.
Yeah, I love that. What I like even more though is because of that happening, the idea is I guess after the One-Year War when like they got folded into Anaheim Electronics, I guess Zimmad kind of still hung around as their own thing, apparently. And um
Yeah, I mean, they made the Dom, is what, Johnny Tacoma says.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there and so apparently it was developed through illegal means by the Hell's Gate Xeon remnants. So illegal means, I guess it's like un approved like weapon production. Like, I'm sure the Earth Sphere is wanting to clamp down on who can produce mobile suits.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously they're producing it because they're wanting to fight back the Earth Federation. Let's see. It is fitted with a specialized cockpit and maneuvering system developed by Hell's Gate that requires the pilot to undergo inhumane body modification in order to use it. Okay,
Yikes.
that's cool. Unlike most Xeon mobile suits, the Ghoul features magnet coating, resulting in high reaction speed. These features allow an amateur pilot to fight evenly against experienced soldiers.
An
So,
amateur pilot that has gone that has undergone inhuman
yeah, that's what
modification.
I'm wondering. Like, what specifically? So, there's not much more information.
Yeah.
We would probably have to read this Blazing Shadow
Can't be any
novel.
worse than the Psychozaku, right?
Yeah. I I would be curious, especially when it's Zimmad. Like, I wonder what direction they would have gone with that. Um, and I don't even know if it's been translated. It looks like it has 4 volumes or 16 chapters. That would be pretty neat to yeah, I'm looking at this character to see if it explains anything, but yeah, there's very little
Yeah.
information. Interesting. I bet
We'll have
it
to check
wasn't
out, Xeonic
translated.
Scans
Oh, it's on
and
there.
see if he's translated this one.
Yeah, because I like that idea of the story. It's after 1 year war. We don't get too much of that, actually. If you think about it, it's usually during 1 year war, but it's like they're hunting down remnants. Like, I like that idea. Um,
Yeah.
that's just a
A
cool.
and that's what makes that game 0081 so awesome, is
Yeah.
that, you're playing as Xeon remnants and also the Federation that's hunting them down.
I'm glad you brought that up because I need to get back to that game and beat that level that I'm having such a hard time on. Um,
Is that
what
tank escort mission that we were
no,
doing?
no, it's the I wanna say it's like the 3rd or 4th level in the main single player campaign where it's is it a goof or some other suit that just destroys you? Like, you go through the level and destroy other easily, and then it pops out and just destroys you, and it's
I
like,
is it
"What?"
the first time you fight the Ifrit Noct?
That's what it is. That's what
Oh,
it is,
yeah.
yep.
That's yeah, you gotta avoid those sabers because he will cut you
That's
down pretty quick.
and I wanna get through that because I really, really strongly want to beat that game. I feel like that is just a Gundam game I need to play through because it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if it were a first person game like Rise from the Ashes, that would be like the quintessential Gundam experience, I feel like.
Yeah, that's true because yeah, the 0081 has I like how it handles the upgrading of your mobile suits.
Yeah. It's
That's
not
really
as customizable as like an Armored Core where you can
right.
swap out arms and legs, and what's that Greek story about the ship where you swap out enough parts, is it still the same ship even?
Oh, I don't know. Good one. I bet Talos would know. He's in the chat.
There you go.
Um, let's see. Okay, so anyway, the whole point of that was interesting. They have something called the Ghoul. It's like a post 1 year war Zimmad mobile suit. There's not too much information on it, which is very interesting. So it would be cool to maybe do a video where it's more of a deeper dive because I really want to understand what the modifications were. Um,
Yeah, and to bring
the
it full
ship of
circle, that was definitely
Theseus.
developed by a guy with a name like Ghoul.
Yeah, there you
That is
go.
not a flowery name by any
D-
stretch.
Totally a dude that Halloween is his favorite holiday.
Yeah,
He has
maybe has
different
his hair, like, down to the side and writes
yeah,
poetry in a composition notebook.
favorite band is
I'm being a
AFI.
bit of a bully.
No, no, I like where you're going with this. It's a cool suit though. I gotta say it
It is.
has cool
The
looks.
face reminds me of Shredder from the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, good call.
Yeah.
I was thinking the Noisy Fairy, I forget what that main suit you get from the main character that's, like, really awesome with the shotgun. I don't know
The
why.
camper?
Yeah, Camphor. It kinda almost has that look to it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, pretty cool. Um, okay. This other news story. So I like to look at news like this because this is Gundam information like outside of the fandom. This is the Wall Street Journal. Gundam stock, the case for investing in giant animated robot suits. Like no one within a Gundam community would talk like that. So that's why I think this is going to be interesting. So Bandai Namco, the Japanese company behind the cult anime Mobile Suit Gundam, has legions of loyal customers and some potentially valuable new franchises. Okay. Gundam, Dragon Ball, One Piece, the company built atop these iconic Japanese anime franchises should be on investors' screens too. So I guess what this article is saying, and the point of Wall Street Journal, is letting investors know or people know, hey, keep your eye out on this property. Japanese toy manufacturer Bandai Namco is best known for making what hobbyists call Gunpla, plastic models based on the animation series Mobile Suit Gundam. Though the television series featuring robot battles in space was launched more than 40 years ago, the brand is still going strong. The Gundam franchise just had its best year ever, generating 131 billion yen, the equivalent of about 900 million in revenue for Bandai Namco in the fiscal year ending in March. And
Awesome.
I got to say, there's a lot of times I come across people that don't know what Gundam is, and they ask what my YouTube channel is about. And I'm like, well, it's about this Japanese anime property. And they're like, what is it called? Gundam. Like, what's Gundam? Well, it's about, and I
Kind of
feel
a
like
long
this,
story.
I feel like article like this, you can take info from and use that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so the pandemic boosted sales of Gunpla, which kept stay-at-home adults and children entertained, but the franchise's strong staying power all its own. In an April report, Goldman Sachs compared Gunpla to Lego, which has also managed to attract adult fans with high-priced niche items. And Bandai Namco has been using
True.
different media, such as games and animation, to push the franchise further. For example, its animation series, The Witch from Mercury, released last year, has expanded its already broad audience. Bandai Namco also owns the rights to make toys and video games for some other popular anime franchises. Dragon Ball and One Piece, in particular, are the big revenue drivers that have been growing quickly in recent years. Bandai's toy business, which accounts for more than half of its operating profit. So, their toys, more than half of the money they make. That's isn't that like that
Tomino
Star
wept.
Wars thing? You know, with with
Yeah.
George Lucas? Like, it's interesting still, and I'm even surprised because I thought maybe
Yeah.
toys were declining, you know?
It reminds me of Spaceballs and the classic Mel Brooks line, merchandising,
Yeah,
merchandising,
yeah.
Spaceballs the video game, Spaceballs the coloring book. Like,
But
yeah,
that's interesting because I feel like, and I don't know if that's the case of being an adult and getting older, but I feel like toys just aren't as popular. And my kids, they're not into toys
yeah,
like I
younger
was.
generations tend to be more into video games lately
Yeah.
than
So seeing that it's still more than half, and I want to say, is it Bandai's toy business? But it's interesting. It gets to another aspect. Let's see.
I can't
Bandai's toy
help
business, which
Oh, go
accounts for
ahead.
more than half. Revenue there has doubled in the past 5 years. Yeah, revenue has doubled in the past, while operating margin also doubled to 13% in the last fiscal year ending in March. Apart from the plastic model, sales of trading cards have also been growing quickly. Now, that's something I've been seeing more often than not, is as I am searching, navigating, the pop culture nerd stuff, cards are still a thing. I Who knew?
Yeah.
Uh,
I
okay, so what's up?
No, I mean, I'm with you. I thought that trading cards were gonna go away, but, like,
Yeah, and I
Pokemon's
wonder if
still
like
going strong, like
and I wonder if it's a popularity of Pokemon that keeps cards as a popular option. I don't know.
yeah. Well, and
But this is
Bandai owns
interesting.
Yu-Gi-Oh! As well.
Oh, that's right. Yu-Gi-Oh is a big one too, still. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is interesting. The company's digital business, mostly video games, hasn't been doing quite as well lately, though there are reasons to think this things may improve. The segment includes games based on the firm's anime intellectual properties, but also comes up with new concepts that can expand into franchises. For example, the game Elden Ring, launched last year, was a smash hit, selling more than 20 million copies worldwide. A coming expansion pack could be another bestseller. Jeffries expects it to sell more than 10 million copies in the first 12 months after its debut later this year or early next year. Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon coming out in August. So this article is late August, but he probably wrote it before.
Yeah.
Should also boost Bandai Namco's game revenue, and that is true. So, but what's interesting about them bringing up the video game stuff here is the popular stuff they brought up were games made by game developers, and I mean where it's not like an IP that, hey, we need someone to make a game about this. This is
Yeah.
more of an idea that a developer had, and I think that's the problem with their anime properties. And I don't know though with One Piece and Dragon Ball, those games probably sell good. I don't know. I think they have a younger target audience, but with
Yeah.
Gundam, they're more of making a game that fits a sector instead of making a game for it on its own. Like, like they want to make a Gundam game. Here is something that imbues what Gundam is and takes the best of game development design.
Yeah.
And when uh, you look at the games they've come out, I mean, I think the best example is Evolution, where they doubled down on that. Let's just make a hero shooter. No one cared. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very telling that those franchises you mentioned, Dragon Ball and One Piece, they lend themselves so perfectly to fighting games that pretty much every Dragon Ball game is just a reskinned fighting game. And
Okay.
I don't say that, like, to disparage them at all. I've played them, and I think that they're fun. It's just, you know yeah, Dragon Ball Z is all about fighting. So, yeah, fighting game, duels, that type of deal. And we've seen Gundam try to reskin that as well with Gundam Battle Assault, so it's
Ah,
like, I don't think that anyone's really been able to find that winning formula for a video game. GBO2 is very close, and you and I have talked about that, where it's like,
yeah,
it's
that's
very
true.
close to being the authentic.
Like a unique experience for Gundam. Yeah, you're right. That even though I still feel like it's more of a budget than a true AAA, it's still more of its own identity than I mean, the Dynasty Warriors Gundam, great, but it's Dynasty Warriors. It's
Exactly.
SD Gundam Battle Alliance just took the Marvel Ultimate Alliance formula.
Yeah.
Still fun, but not its own thing. So I think it's cool to see this from the Wall Street Journal outside of the fandom talk about how the toys are super popular this for them and the property's popular. The games aren't doing that great, except for their non IP games or their
You
non
know,
Gundam.
I can't help but feel like this article is sort of trying to court investors ahead of the Gundam movie coming out.
Yeah, you know what? Great observation. That was part of my motivation to make this channel because that was back when they were already announcing the movie, and I was like, "Well, I
Yeah.
want to be able to cover it." It hasn't happened yet.
Right. And so honestly, that makes me feel good because if I don't want to say like, oh, they're trying to beg for money, but like if they are actively seeking investors, then it means that they want to throw a big budget at the Gundam movie and do it well, do it right.
Yeah, so this time they're taking could be more telling of them doing it right than really an issue that's going on.
Yeah.
So, in real quick, we're going to be ending here, but something I wanted to bring up. One Piece just came out on Netflix. I haven't watched it. Have you ever watched the anime?
No, I didn't really appeal to me, but
Okay.
yeah. What about you? What's your
I haven't watched it, but I think I've heard positive things about it though. So I
so
know
have I.
there's kind of this trend of Netflix anime adaptations not being that good, but this actually sounded like it's doing pretty good. So I might
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice when the original creator is actively involved with the production of it as opposed to just kind of signing off on it, right?
Right. Yeah. Um okay then yeah, I guess it is about time. So we will sorry, my wife is like asking me something. I think she doesn't realize I'm doing something live, but there you go. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, good talk today. Video game heavy, which nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty
Well,
fun.
it's like you said on your birthday video, the stuff that when you get an opportunity to talk about Gundam and video games, that's when Adam's in his sweet spot. That's
Oh
like
yeah, that's true. That's true for sure. Okay, well, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and head out. Thanks everyone that joined. This was a lot of fun. Have
yeah,
a good
thank you guys.
weekend. Yeah, podcast will be up tomorrow, and yeah, talk later. See y'all.
Cheers.